say I'm actually going to ask Miss Murphy to call Dr. Dixon.
Right. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Manston. Thank you, sir. The document, let's just have a moment to get our documents organised. The material you will need, Dr. Dixon's proof of evidence is your tab 17, a summary proof of evidence from which you'll read, at least in part, tab 21. And as you know, her reports, volume 1, 2 and 3, tab 18, 19 and 20. And I'll introduce Dr. Dixon, sir, by reference to her main proof of evidence, so tab 17. We'll turn, please, Dr. Dixon, to page 2. Thank you. And when you're there, your name is Sally Dixon. You're a business and aviation consultant.
I have.
You tell us at 1.2 that your professional qualifications include a Master's in Business Administration from the University of Kent, a doctorate in Airport Master Planning.
Yes, that's right.
We're going to have to be really good at sharing turns. Not always my forte. You tell us a little bit about your background in paragraph 1.3, which we'll come back to in a moment. At 1.4, you declare to the inspector that the evidence that you've prepared and provided this appeal is true, and you confirm that the opinions expressed are your true and professional opinions. Is that right?
That's correct.
Back then, as we said, to sections 1.3 and 1.4. In 1.3, you tell us a little about your earlier career. At 1.4, you tell us about your involvement with Manston Airport. Please, can you tell the inspector about that?
About my previous involvement with Manston Airport.
Yeah.
I was engaged by Plane Station initially as a freelance consultant to look at the acquisition of a number of airports. The first 3 were in Jordan in the Middle East, and then I joined Plane Station as Head of Strategic Information, involved with the acquisitions process.
Then, turning back to your 1.1, insofar as your work now for River Oak is concerned, how long have you been undertaking your research?
I was engaged last March, so 1 year.
Thank you. Turn then, please, to your summary proof of evidence at tab 21. And read, please, the first 2 paragraphs of section 2, so 2.1 and 2.2. This is to do with the Avius Solutions report. So summary proof of evidence, page 2, beginning of section 2, concerning the Avius Solutions work.
I met with Dr. Chris Smith and Mr. Paul Morris on the 10th of August 2016 at the RPS offices, along with Tony Freudman from River Oak, Angela Shembry from RPS and Rich Connolly from Osprey. Avia's time frame was tight, with only 6 weeks to complete their report. Avia had made a recent site visit which seemed at odds with the difficulty that River Oak had experienced in gaining access.
Who described the timetable, please? That's tight. I see that language is used in your summary proof, but you also use that word.
Tight, it was very tight, I felt, with being 6 weeks.
Do you know what Avia's view of that was?
They confirmed that they believed that was a tight time frame.
Now, you said that you've been working on your research for a period of a year. What comment would you have to make on Avia's timetable in that context?
It takes a considerable amount of time to arrange interviews with key people in order to to get the amount of information that you need to base any sort of decision upon in terms of the future of Manston. And 6 weeks just wouldn't be enough time to have engaged with people, to arrange those interviews, undertaken those interviews, to have prepared yourself to ask the right questions that would elicit sufficient information to transcribe the interviews, to analyse them and to prepare a final report.
Sticking with the summary, and going down to 2.6, you were there telling the inspector about what you explained about your research methodology. Would you read that, please?
I explained my research methodology. I talked about my contact with Transport for London and the work they had done in forecasting air freight. I advised them to speak to TfL's principal transport planner for aviation, whom I subsequently contacted on their behalf. I also sent an extract of the TfL report that refers to the need for 54,000 freighter movements per annum, and that airports such as Manston could handle at least 14,000 of these movements.
Just pausing there, I'm just going to ask a short series of questions now about the TfL work and the capacity position in the southeast, which forms the context for your work. And so what we're going to do in order to look at this matter is to turn to volume 1 of the report, which is tab 18. And when you have it, turn please to page 11. And on page 11 you should have a heading 3.4, the need for air freight capacity in the southeast. On page 12, you explain in the report that Boris Johnson, then Mayor of London, proposed construction of a new airport in the Thames Estuary, which was an idea originally mooted in the 50s. Mr Johnson believed that locating an airport to the east of London, away from the major conurbations of the capital, would have significant benefits, including reducing the environmental and the security problems of an aircraft. Sorry, I've mangled that. Security problems of aircraft overflying London. His aviation team at Transport for London prepared a forecast for the airport which estimates that without new infrastructure, London airports would be fully utilised by passenger aircraft movements, constraining the potential for freighter operations. And the TfL forecast looked at 3 scenarios, didn't it, Dr. Dixon? Just explain, would you please, to the inspector with reference to these paragraphs, what those 3 scenarios were?
The first scenario was that there was no new capacity. The second scenario was that there would be additional runways at both Gatwick and Stansted to give 6 runways with the existing 2 at Heathrow. That's referred to as 2 by 2 by 2. Mm-hmm. And then the third option was the development of a 4-runway hub airport in the Thames Estuary.
Did the TfL work consider a runway 3 London Heathrow scenario?
No, it didn't consider Heathrow because at that time Heathrow was out of the picture. But however, that would have been 1 additional runway, whereas what they looked at was 2 additional and 4 additional.
On the basis of any of those scenarios, was there a need for air freight capacity identified in that work?
Under all of the scenarios, there were additional capacity. Required, sorry, yes, there was additional capacity required. Yeah. 54,000 freighter movements without any additional capacity.
Now, in your 3.4.5 of your report, you note that the demand was additional to predictions for belly freight on passenger airlines, and you said that the report states that, and then you've got some bold text in italics. Read that out, would you please? Would you read that out, please?
Around 14,000 freighters a year could still be accommodated in the vicinity of London.
Well, we're doing so well on that. Sorry.
Around 14,000 freighters a year could still be accommodated in the vicinity of London by using capacity at airports such as Manston, which already handles some long-haul freighters.
That's a quotation, is it, from the TfL work?
Yes, that's a direct quotation.
I note that it says airports such as Manston. Are there any other airports, i.e. airports other than Manston, which could accommodate that capacity requirement?
No, not in the southeast. In my report, I do look at the potential for other airports in the southeast on page 19. But all of the other airports have restrictions of some type.
So if you turn to page 18 first, in sticking with the same report in tab 18, page 18, you should have a heading at the bottom of the page. Other South East UK airfields. And there's a section of text, and it ends with this sentence: other airports in the South East and constraints on their development are shown in table 3. And then over the page, you have a list of those South East airfields. And your conclusion then, please, Dr. Dixon, in terms of how Manston performs against those other, should we say, candidates?
Manston is the only viable option in the southeast because of the length of the runway, because of the lack of airspace issues, because of the land available for warehousing and other infrastructure required to operate a successful airport operation.
That suggestion by TfL that Manston could perform that function, could you provide your evidence, please, as to whether or not that allows the inspector any insight into the merits of Manston as a strategic location, thinking about what Ms McIntyre said in that regard?
It is, all the research that I undertook says that the demand is in the southeast. The map on page 18 shows where the businesses served by integrators actually operating at the moment out of East Midlands are from, and that clearly shows that they are all, a vast proportion of them are located in the southeast. And Manston, for the reasons that I've given with the length of the runway, the space available, and the lack of any airspace issues, mean that Manston can fulfil that function of providing capacity in the southeast. The trucking distances, Mr. Kane mentioned, 3-hour trucking distances from Manston mean that we can cover pretty much the entire area of the southeast within a 3-hour distance. The key point is that it's the turnaround times, it's the speed. If you choose to pay to fly freight by air, what you want is it to be off and onto the road quickly. So the 3-hour drive time really has little impact on, in terms of when you add up the total time from its origin to its final destination. The trucking time at the end is a very small proportion.
Return back then, please, to page 12 of this volume of your report. And within 3.4.6, having considered the TfL work, you then turn to York Aviation, and does this, please, provide a forecast of demand in a Heathrow runway 3 scenario?
Yes, that's correct.
And what is it, please? And what does it say?
Uh, 3.4.6.
Yeah. So in York Aviation considered a scenario with London Heathrow runway 3, unlike the TfL work, and at the bottom of your 3.4.6 you note its conclusion. Just highlight that if you would please for the inspector.
The York work suggests that even with the third runway at Heathrow, 45,000 extra freighter movements would be required in the southeast.
If you then go back to your summary proof of evidence, please, and that's in your attachment 1, and turn within it to 2.7. Having identified that capacity context information, what was your understanding of the Avia team's appreciation of that context?
They seemed to be unaware of the need for freighter capacity in the southeast. So I don't think that's saying that too strongly. They seemed almost just they hadn't done any background research at that time, but they seemed to be completely unaware of the overspill issues that were happening and the trucking that was taking place of items that could have been flown in or out of the UK that were being trucked to Northern Europe for air freighting.
Thank you. Would you read 2.7 through to the end of 2.9, please?
It did not appear that the Avia team had apprised themselves of the existing information on the need for airport infrastructure. I subsequently provided a list of key documents that demonstrate the need in the southeast. Many of these were not referred to in their report. Asked if they were speaking to any government departments, Mr. Smith commented that he felt it was of no use speaking to the Transport Committee about lack of capacity, since they already had a view that did not match his opinion. I was surprised by the poor level of information in the Enquiry report. 2016 figures from IATA show growth of 3.8% for the year, which contrasts with the figures used by Avia. The report did not take into consideration the information that was provided at our meeting. At the meeting, Dr. Smith noted that a viable airport needed to have a mix of passengers and freight. However, the report focused on the passenger market but failed to provide anything other than a forecast of 30,000 tonnes each year until 2040. This figure merely replicates the tonnage handled by Manston during the last years of its operation, when it was suffering from lack of investment. Avia's forecast is based on very little investment being made by Manston. That's on page 84 of their report. Contrary to River Oak's proposal, including the level of investment outlined at that meeting.
You heard Mr. Kane's scepticism. It was his view that there was some predetermination evidenced by the Avia approach. Have you been in a position to form a judgment about that?
It is hard to understand how the conclusion that was reached.
We'll turn then to the purpose of your detailed work, River, as we've heard, plans some very significant investments in Manston Airport. If we, in that context, let's just turn back to the beginning of your report, volume 1, so page 2, please. So we're still at tab 18 again. Page 2 of the main report. Aims and objectives of the report in your section 1.3. And at 1.3.2 we can immediately see, I think, that your report serves multiple purposes. Could you just explain for the Inspector, please, what you set out in the bullet points underneath 1.3.2?
The aims of the report were to provide the information required to support the DCO application, to inform the Manston Airport business case and master plans, to inform Manston's marketing strategy, to initiate stakeholder consultation, to continue to inform and gain support from key stakeholders, to provide a platform for lobbying government and industry organisations, and to play a key role in forming government policy for air freight in the UK.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, just thinking about the information which is required to support the development consent order application, the DCO application, could you describe the detailed airport design process which is presently taking place?
So it was necessary for me to provide a forecast that was very detailed, much more detailed than a top-down forecast could provide, because of the need to inform the master plan. So the work that I did needed to identify the origin and destination of aircraft type, and to give an idea of what would be carried on those aircraft. This was needed so that the master planning team could work out how many stands were required, how much warehousing space would be required, and how much fuel storage was needed.
Yeah. Thinking about those some practical points, what can you tell the Inspector, please, about whether or not River Oak is actually relying on your work as part of that detailed design process?
Yes, absolutely. They have taken my forecast, which has been looked at by a number of other parties to ensure that it is robust, because so much does depend on it.
Yeah.
So much investment depends on the figures that I've produced in this report.
Well, now you mentioned a review, and of course the Inspector heard what Mr. Kane said earlier on about a peer review. Has your work been the subject of any peer review, please?
Yes, it has. Aside from my colleagues who are consulting to River Oak, it was also peer reviewed by two academics at Loughborough University, Professor Eisen and Dr. Budd.
And what was the outcome, please, of their review?
The outcome was that they suggested that I break down my rather lengthy report at that stage into 4 more concise reports, so that they were more easily understandable and covered more specific topics under each of the volumes.
Subject to that sort of format point, did they form any conclusion about the robustness of your work?
Yes, I made any changes that they suggested, and they were happy with the final, with the comments that they've made being taken on board.
So Dr. Dixon just mentioned in passing 4 pieces of work. Of course, you've got 3 in front of you. If you turn, please, to paragraph 1.1 of her proof of evidence, which is in, as you know, tab 17, just so that you're fully in the picture, as it were.
Just to be clear, sorry, to clarify, we've only got the first 3 volumes.
Yes, that's exactly the point.
Yeah,
You're just ahead of me there.
Oh,
So
sorry.
if you turn to 1.1 of her, Dr. Dixon's
Sorry
proof.
to interrupt.
No, perfectly all right. We're on the same theme, you and I, sir, which is that if you look at her, the third sentence as such, so she's talking about having been engaged by River Oak. I've undertaken research and produced reports in 3 volumes entitled Manston, a Regional and National Aviation Asset, concerning the need for aviation capacity in the South East, setting out the results of a quantitative study I took with a range of industry experts and estimating air freight and passenger forecasts for the reopened airport. So that's appendices 1, 2 and 3. And then she says this: I've also undertaken work into the potential economic impacts of Manston Airport on its locale, including job creation. This work is still under preparation and will be presented in a further report for the DCO application. Dr. Dixon, is that report number 4 that you just mentioned?
Yes, that's correct, and I'm still working on that report because that will provide details of the number of jobs that will be created, exactly what those jobs are in terms of airport-based jobs, the knock-on to the economy, and also the key training elements that will be involved too.